بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم آتنا رحمة من عندك وعلمنا من لدنك علما. أعزائي المشاهدين، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Of course, we've got the Sun, then Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and 1.5 billion kilometers from the Sun sits Saturn. And this is all we thought that there was until the 18th century.
Since then, the solar system has gradually expanded. In 1781, Uranus was discovered, followed in 1846 by Neptune.
Tiny Pluto was added in 1930, bringing the edge of the solar system out to 5.9 billion kilometers away from the Sun.
Pluto was counted as a planet for over 70 years. But now we know it's just one object in a huge donut-shaped belt of billions of icy bodies and comets, called the Kuiper Belt. It was thought that the Kuiper Belt marked the outer edge of the realm of the planets. But now it seems that that might not be the case.
For some of us, it's an extraordinary thought. But many astronomers have long suspected there may be other planets lurking in the dark expanse beyond the Kuiper Belt. And we're getting the first evidence that suggests they may be right.
To get a feel of just how far away Planet 9 is, if it exists, we need to plot its position in relation to the rest of the planets. On this scale, every centimetre is about 35 million kilometres. The Earth is 150 million kilometres from the Sun. Pluto is 40 times further away, and the outer edge of the Kuiper Belt is still further.
But Planet 9 is far beyond that. At the point of closest approach in its orbit, it sits 200 times further from the Sun than the Earth. That's a whopping 30 billion kilometres away from the Sun.
But unlike the other planets, the proposed orbit of Planet 9 is not circular. Its highly eccentric path takes it much, much deeper into space. At its furthest possible point, it's aphelion. It could be as much as 1,200 times further from the Sun than the Earth. On this scale, it's 54 metres away. In reality, it would be 180 billion kilometres from the Sun.
And because the orbit is inclined by 30 degrees to the rest of the solar system, it means it's also above or below the plane of the rest of the planets.
It seems almost unbelievable that there could be a planet so far out in the solar system. A mysterious world, 10 times more massive than the Earth. On an orbit so long, it takes between 10 and 20,000 years to complete one lap of the Sun.
But how was the discovery made? Chris drew the short straw and flew to California to find out.
One of the key people in the Planet 9 story is an astronomer here at Caltech, and he's got history when it comes to changing our views of the solar system. 10 years ago, he was instrumental in demoting poor old Pluto, and even wrote a book about it. His name is Mike Brown. So the story starts with the outer bits of the solar system, the Kuiper Belt.
What we found is that the most distant objects that are part of the Kuiper Belt, so these ones that come into the Kuiper Belt but swing out really far, the very most distant ones, if you look at their orbits, all of their orbits are pointing off in one direction instead of being randomly distributed around the sky.
So how tight is that alignment?
The ones that we know for sure that are aligned are 6 objects, and they're aligned within about 107 degree swath of the sky. Something like this.
Yeah, okay. And it's not just the alignment in direction as well. The orbits have other things in common.
Well, so first you see the alignment in the direction, and then you realize that these 6 very most distant objects are also all tilted in the same direction, downward and a little bit to the side. They're within about 7 degrees of being in the same skewed plane as of each other. And the combination of those two is what really shows you that there's something strange going on. Because, you know, you could get the things, the 6 of them lined up just due to chance. It's about a 1% chance you would get it due to chance. About 1%, you know, it's a small number, but it's not that small of a number. But if you take it also into the fact that they're tilted like that, that's another approximately 1% chance. So it's about 0.01% chance that this is all just randomly aligned.
So is that what got your attention and got you working on the problem?
That was the big clue that something is going on in the outer solar system.
Giovanna, if Planet 9 does exist, it seems to have some very exotic characteristics compared with the rest of our solar system. In your work in exoplanets, have you seen anything similar to these characteristics out there?
Well, we're talking about an object that is about 10 times the mass of the Earth. These kind of objects are classified as super-Earths, which is a very exotic name. And NASA Kepler satellite tells us basically that these are among the most frequent objects in our galaxy. In fact, we didn't have any objects of this particular size, which was a bit puzzling in a certain sense. But if Planet 9 does exist, then of course we would tick in the box, and we also have our own super-Earth.
So we had one missing, and now we look as if we've got one.
Exactly, exactly.
But Planet 9, if it's out there, is a whopping 200 astronomical units away from us at its closest approach. So that just seems an awful long way away. Have we got examples of planets that far away from their sun?
Actually, we do. And what you see now is GU Pisces B, which is located at 2,000 astronomical units from its star.
So that's the further reaches of Planet 9, potentially. Yes.
This is a real image, by the way. It's not
the fact you can actually take an image like this is amazing.
It's really very cool.
Okay, so we've looked at the size, we've looked at the distance from its local star, but now it's also a very eccentric orbit, and that seems quite exotic for our solar system.
It definitely is. Most of the planets in our own solar system are orbiting in orbits which are almost circular. But actually, however, we are seeing planets that are orbiting in extreme elliptical orbits, and we have some example like this planet that is called the HD 806 or 6b. And as you can see from this picture, we have planets out there that are orbiting in very elliptical, what we call eccentric sort of orbit.
So if Planet 9 does exist, it isn't as exotic as we perceive it to be, because there's lots of other examples out there that are similar to the characteristics of Planet 9.
You're right, Maggie. And if Planet 9 were sort of proposed and discovered before exosolar planet were found, probably we would dismiss this case, saying, well, this is way too eccentric, this is way too odd. We can't have a planet like this. And the fact that, on the contrary, now we know that planets like this can indeed exist is really making the case for Planet 9 even more interesting.
Well, thank you very much. It's been fascinating speaking to you.
It was a pleasure.
In theory, there's no reason why Planet 9 should not be out there. But there's only one way to prove its existence, and that is to directly observe the planet. Mike Brown took Chris to the famous Griffith Observatory to look at the skies above LA and to point out where he thinks Planet 9 is.
Okay, well, clear sky, sort of. Where is it? Where's this planet?
Well, we know its path across the sky. We know its orbit, so we know the path. And the path across the sky goes from somewhere over here, up across here, right through the middle of Orion and Taurus, and then down south across this way, and then, of course, all the way back around. We actually also know that around Orion and Taurus is where it's the most distant from the sun, and we think that's where it is. We think that the places that are closer to the sun, it'd be too bright. We would have seen it already.
Okay, so in some sense you're already getting some observational data on the planet. You know where it isn't, and you know other things as well.
The other thing that we would know is that if it's too big, if it's the size of Saturn or the size of Jupiter, it would have been detected by the WISE spacecraft a couple of years ago. So they did a survey of the whole sky looking for things that move, and we now know that there's nothing as big as Jupiter or Saturn out to many, many times the distance of where we think Planet 9 is. So it has to be small meaning the size of Neptune or maybe a little bit bigger, and it has to be pretty far away still and somewhere off in here.
And pretty faint. Otherwise, I mean, we're not talking amateur telescopes here to find this.
No, in the end, it's going to take us some time on the biggest telescopes in the world. But with the biggest telescopes in the world, it is well within range, and we'll be able to find it.
It'll be exciting.
Yes.
That we will have to answer, if people are to take the claim seriously, is how did it get to its current orbit? To get to the bottom of that question, I've come to Queen Mary, University of London, to meet Professor Richard Nelson. Richard, what's the problem with the proposed orbit of Planet 9?
Well, it's very difficult to form a planet on an orbit like that. And we believe, according to current models, that it would take almost the age of the solar system itself to form a planet all that far out.
Because it has to accrete onto the body.
That's right. So the accretion process, which brings small agglomerations of material together and builds larger and larger objects, leading eventually to a planet, all the way out there just takes far too long because it's moving around very, very slowly, and there's a very low density of material there as well.
So if it didn't form out there at the outer limits of the solar system, where did it form?
Well, our best guess is that it probably would have formed among the existing giant planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune. So there are theoretical models already which indicate that if you run computer simulations of the early solar system evolution and you have a dynamical instability, having a fifth planet there actually helps those models reproduce what we see in the solar system today.
So that fifth planet could be Planet 9?
Could very well have been Planet 9, which is no longer there but orbiting further out.
So what are we seeing here?
What we're seeing here is a computer model of the early stages of the solar system, but with 5 planets. So we've got the white planet there, that's Planet 9. The other planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune. You'll see the planets are going around essentially on circular orbit.
As you'd expect.
As you would expect, that's right. They're all interacting, they're all perturbing one another. But Planet 9 in this simulation is a little bit too close to Saturn when it starts. At some point, we're going to see it have an encounter which gives it quite a dramatic little kick, and you'll see it change. There you go. So yes. That's right. So you see that. And this keeps going on and on and on. Jump forward and you can see that the planet's orbit has expanded a lot. And there you have a very eccentric and a very inclined orbit.
So does that do it? Does that give us the orbit of Planet 9?
Well, unfortunately not, because Planet 9 has an orbit where the closest approach to the Sun is about 200 or 300 astronomical units away. So, as you will have seen here, Planet 9 keeps coming back into the inner solar system and continues to interact with the giant planets there. Eventually, one of those encounters will be strong enough to throw it out of the solar system altogether.
But how can you stop it from pinging off out into the galaxy?
Well, I think if Planet 9 is actually proven to be there, it's going to tell us something very interesting and very important about the origin of our solar system. So, what we've looked at so far is a solar system forming in isolation. But now let's imagine that the solar system formed within a star cluster. If we look out within the galaxy, we see that stars do tend to form within groups and within clusters of stars. If Planet 9 was thrown out onto one of these very, very eccentric orbits while the star cluster was still there, then gravitational perturbations from the star cluster could have caused Planet 9 to change its orbit when it was at its most distant position from the Sun. So I have a simulation which shows that here. When it goes out on this orbit this time around, it's not going to come back in anymore.
Right.
There's going to be an interaction with a nearby star, which changes the shape of the orbit, just like that.
So suddenly it expands outwards and stops going back into the inner solar system.
So that's what saves it from being ejected from the solar system.
So a lot of your model does seem to tie in with the evidence we're seeing for Planet 9. It could explain the sort of the huge orbit, the inclined orbit, and why it's still there and not out there in the galaxy.
That's right. That's why I said at the beginning that I think proving that Planet 9 is present within our solar system with the orbit suggested would also indicate very strongly that our solar system didn't form in a lonely place but was part of an earlier star cluster.
Pretty fantastic stuff.
Wonderful.
Thank you. It's been fascinating.
Pleasure.
So, very unscientific question, but the one that keeps coming up. How sure are you that this exists?
Oh, 1 quadrillion%. So you got an unscientific question, but a scientific answer right back at you.
But as a theory, you believe your models, right?
Actually, we try very hard not to believe our models. But look, if this thing is not out there, right? If the search comes up empty, then the outer solar system has some really, really substantial explaining to do.
And you've ruled out the other explanations, right?
At least for me, it is difficult at this point to argue for a solar system that makes sense without Planet 9.
Mike, what about you?
So I'm slightly lower than a quadrillion%. The human brain is really good at seeing patterns. And when I can't sleep at night, it's because I'm worried that we saw a pattern and made up an explanation. And then as more observations come in, the pattern disappears. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm actually very convinced. But that doesn't mean that I sleep all through the night.
I sleep all through the night.
Yeah.
I am really eager to see it, to confirm it, to learn what it's like, to see if it has moons and rings, and I just want to know all these things.
And do you have any sense of what that will feel like?
You know, I bought a cigar about a year and a half ago, and it's still sitting in my desk. And I'm, you know, every time that something dramatic happens, I always forget to smoke it. So maybe I won't forget that time.
You know, I'm gonna go buy a good bottle of champagne and I'm going to put it in my office. I'll put it in the fridge in our office, so keep it cold. And when it happens, we're just going to drink it right then.
And between now and the cigars and the champagne, while we're waiting for the discovery, what are you two working on next?
We are looking for the planet, but we're also looking for more of these objects that are aligned, that are perpendicular, that aren't aligned or aren't perpendicular, to prove ourselves wrong. You know, if anybody's going to prove us wrong, we would rather do it ourselves than to have somebody else do it. So we are trying very hard to prove ourselves wrong.
It's an exciting time.
It is. Let's hope it gets more exciting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Today's been incredibly exciting. The team's belief in Planet 9 is contagious, and I've become increasingly convinced that it really is out there somewhere in the outer wastes of the solar system. I'm sure I'm not the only one. There will be teams and telescopes from across the world racing to be the first to see it. And if it's found, when it's found, it will be the astronomical discovery of the century.
That's it for this programme. But don't forget to check out February's Star Guide on the website. Next month, we'll be looking at the top 5 photographs of the solar system ever taken. But in the meantime, get outside and get looking up.
But first, the music's distracting. Let's have a look at what we know so far. This whole planet thing in the studio absolutely fantastic. I love talking about space.
That's what we needed the music.
It was, you're right. With us here is Carol Mundell, Professor in Extragalactic Astronomy at the University of Bath.
Good morning.
So just tell us this idea. So the idea is there is this planet out there that nobody's seen yet. That's right. So we've seen what we think is the gravitational effect of a planet that's probably about 10 times more massive than the Earth and maybe about 4 times the size of the Earth. Right. And we see its effect on the other bodies in the outer solar system. So it's actually having a little bit of a gravitational pull, if you like. And so when theorists have actually calculated the orbits and added up all the mass that should be out there, there's a bit that's missing, and that's what we think is in this extra planet.
It might be an ignorant question, but if it's so big, why don't we know where it is? We can see the effect of it, but we can't see the planet itself.
Well, it's actually very far away. It's out in a region in the solar system called the Kuiper Belt. So it's actually, Pluto is actually also part of that part of the solar system. But to give you some kind of sense of distance scales, if London was where the sun is, the Earth would be roughly the North Circular Road about Brent's Cross. Right. Salford would be out where Pluto is, so we'd be out in the darker regions of the solar system. Yeah. And this hidden planet is out somewhere in the mid-Atlantic or over in the western United States. Okay. Right. So it's much.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in. So let me get started. I have a limited amount of time. The clock's running. The solar system is old. We have little time here. So I'm a planetary dynamicist. That's a mouthful and a pretty esoteric profession. But as a planetary dynamicist, I'm especially tuned to 2 mathematical things about planets: the shapes of their orbits and their period ratios. So I like numbers. So about 2 years ago, when astronomers started noticing some peculiar patterns in the Kuiper belt, this belt of small planets beyond Neptune. We call them minor planets or Kuiper belt objects. I tuned into their orbit shapes and their period ratios. And I stumbled onto a new idea that may help us discover a new planet in the distant solar system. Now, the most famous search for Planet 9, so I'm here to talk about Planet 9. The most famous search for Planet 9 was that of Percival Lowell. This is his observatory. He was convinced that the movements of Uranus and Neptune were sufficiently aberrant that there was a large planet beyond Neptune. And he started a systematic search in 1906 at his observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona. That's my adopted home state. And this was the first observatory located remotely to do the best astronomical photography ever. The true Planet 9, not the little Pluto. If a distant Planet 9 is shepherding these Kuiper belt objects, we would like to know how massive is it, where is it orbiting? Now, computer simulations tell us that the planet is up to 10 times Earth's mass at somewhere between 300 to 900 times Earth's distance. Okay, but these simulations tell us nothing about its position in the sky, where it is in its orbit at the current time. Where would we go look for it? It is an orbit period near 17,000 years, a very long period. So this planet is moving really slowly in the sky. This singular choice of Planet 9's orbit period leads to simple resonant geometries of the distant Kuiper belt objects relative to Planet 9, like the shapes that you see on the screen now. These shapes of the resonant orbit show us the portions of the orbital path where this hypothetical planet cannot be at the current time. In addition, there are only two choices or two approximate choices of the tilt of this planet's orbit. One is that it's either close to the planes of these distant Kuiper belt objects, or it follows this Poincaré's periodic orbits of the third kind that I mentioned before, so it has a specific tilt. And those two choices turn out to be one that's about just 18 degrees tilted to the plane of Earth's orbit. The other one is tilted 48 degrees. How did the scattering of this planet affect the course of our own planet? It almost surely did. So Planet 9 will provide a new challenge and a new destination for future exploration. And I thank you.
Civilization. It is widely perceived that researchers had proposed that the so-called Planet X was at least 10 times as large as Earth and was most likely situated at a distance of 250 astronomical units from our Sun, with an orbit of 10 to 20,000 years. There is an understanding that an approaching large body or a star system of planets and moons can trigger considerable differences in magnetic activity, and recent data from our magnetosphere indicates that this is what is now taking place. There were even suggestions that Google Sky had revealed an area in space that had been censored by NASA, showing the winged globe moving through our solar system. So are these subtle warnings an earnest attempt to inform us that an apocalyptic situation is at hand, which is coming from out of this world, something previously unknown to humanity, but which have memories in our subconscious from past lives and records kept over the ages? If we consider the ancient era of Atlantis and Lemuria and what happened to these civilizations, is it any wonder that NASA would redact the location of this incoming body on Google Sky or in their own imagery? Every week, NASA appears to have learned something new that was unimaginable, and yet they want us to imagine that Planet X Nibiru is unreal. As you can envision, the gravitational consequences of a sizable planet moving close to the inner solar system would spell huge problems for planet Earth. Not only are we witnessing climate extremes and a shifting of the Earth, But we are now bearing witness to the very real observations that the four seasons, as we have known them, are now blending. So with all of this in mind, we can now ascertain why certain governments are taking steps to protect their own interests as they prepare for the arrival and the aftermath of this large planetary body or system of planets moving through our solar system. Here is some news that has been widely reported, but which some of you may not be aware of. Russia recently completed building or updating some 5,000 shelters in Moscow. They actually have been quite open about what they are doing, but they haven't specifically stated the actual reason for constructing or updating these shelters. But we do know that they have some facilities that can accommodate up to 100,000 people. The United States is estimated to have over 150 deep underground military bases. Coincidentally, a huge military underground city exists below the Denver airport. Now, these are entire underground cities that have been under construction since the 1980s. But this is a need-to-know classification that is underway and is never published in advance for fear of destabilizing the economy. If you do any research of this topic, you are bound to run into various forms of disinformation. Now, some of it intentional, but much of it produced by uneducated individuals within the public. Until the discovery of Planet X, astronomers had regarded the writings of the ancient Sumerians about this object as legend. When Planet X was discovered in 1983, they suddenly learned that the Sumerians were not the primitive people they had been made out to be by intellectuals of today. Have you ever wondered what the real purpose of the Hubble Space Telescope was intended for? It was not to explore the universe and the solar system, as some have suggested. Rather, the reason for constructing this multi-billion-dollar telescope and then placing it in orbit was for the purpose of observing the inbound Planet X. A June 6th interview with a Hubble insider states this fact as to the Hubble's purpose. He watched this mysterious body through the Hubble telescope and stated that this thing looked as if it was nearby. And the Hubble got cut off, and they encrypted it, and that was the end of any transmission. So let's listen to this interview.
Back in the 1950s, most people aren't aware of it, but there was a scientific storm in America all through the late 50s about this thing out there in space because the astronomers were all watching it, and that was back when they weren't afraid to talk about it. It was in the science magazines. I mean, I had a subscription to, like, Popular Science, and hell, it was on the front cover of the magazine one day in, like, 1961. And I was really excited when I saw it because here's this giant red planet on the horizon of the California coast and a humongous tidal wave coming in towards the coast. And having grew up in the mountains of the Sierras, and this thing in the magazine, it said this tidal wave coming in was going to be at least 3 miles high. And I went and showed it to everybody in the house, and they laughed and they said, look, it says right here, there's nothing to worry about. It won't be here for another 50 years. Hey, guess what? That 50 years has came and gone. And this baby's out there in the sky. They've been watching it. I watched it. And I can tell you, this thing has got so much trash coming around it. You know how we live in a solar system? We've got 9 planets and a big sun. This thing has got 7 planets and its own sun. The years as it went by and we watched it, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then finally, about 2008, we could see this thing like it was across the street. And we could see that it was a blazing hot ball of fire giving out sparkles of red iron oxide dust for thousands of miles in every direction. And you could see the planet circulating it. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I really am nervous about. I think this thing's got a planet like ours circling it. This is its own solar system. We're about to have a solar system come through the middle of our solar system. This can't be good. But unfortunately, it looks as though that's what's going to happen. We were looking at asteroids. Right close to this thing, there's asteroids that are floating around right near that are orbiting the main sun itself. These things appear to be about 500 miles across. This thing looks like a giant red teardrop-shaped dust cloud. And you can see, once if you're able to see it up close like we did, you can see every speck out there. Now, these CIA people that I know say that we're not going to be that close to it when it goes past us. They're saying that in order to attain breakaway speed, when it comes up around the backside of the sun, its speed will at least double, possibly more, which will put it here earlier than everybody is saying it will, and that this thing will probably be about 20 million miles from us when it crosses in front of us. And then as soon as it flips us upside down, we're going to go into its debris field. These CIA guys told me that this pole shift will probably happen from start to finish in around 28 minutes. That doesn't give you a lot of warning. When you see that thing out there in the sky, you're going to have to run as fast as you can to your underground facility, because this is going to happen so fast. Now, see, here's another thing nobody's talking about. You've got this giant iron planet that they say is 47,000 miles across, getting ready to come up past us. And when it starts to approach us, it's going to start and have real serious effects.
So is it a planet or a failed star?
It's not a failed star. You know, I saw this thing up close. It did not look like a failed star. It looked just like our sun.
Right.
Okay. Would you call our sun a failed star?
No. Okay. Well, you had said planet. I wasn't sure if it was like a failed star, brown dwarf, or a full sun. So it's a full sun?
It looks to me like a miniature sun, just like the one we have. The only difference is our sun is giving off flames and stuff, and this one's doing the same thing as it, but it's giving off this red iron oxide cloud of dust around it. And until it got close, we couldn't even tell what was in there. We could see it was hot, and it looked like it was just a dull red when we were first able to discern it through the red cloud. But as it approached, it started to become more apparent that this thing is just orange hot.
Right.
And it's got this enormous, and I mean enormous, at least 50 or 100,000 miles on each side of it, this red dust cloud that goes all the way around it. I know when we were watching it, as it started to make the upward swing to approach behind our sun, it was amazing. The red dust cloud settled down. Instead of being round, it started to settle down into a V, like wings, upside-down wings.
Right.
And I thought, boy, I wonder if that's where the ancient Sumerians got the idea this thing had wings, because, you know, centrifugal force is a funny thing. When it comes back up around the planet, when we see it in the sky, my guess is it's going to look like it's got wings, because centrifugal force is going to be pulling the red iron oxide dust and particles out to one side. This thing's going to look like a big red dragon, exactly like all the ancient Sumerians and the Chinese and all the rest of them that had documented this thing's passing before. It didn't look like a white ball or a snow cloud or nothing. It looked like a big red iron oxide dust cloud with a superheated star in the middle of it. And I mean, you know, and that's what we've seen. So, you know, I don't care what anybody else says. There's a possibility. There's more than one thing out there. You know, I watched it through the Hubble Space Telescope, and when this thing looked like it was across the street, the Hubble got cut off and they encrypted it, and that was the end of any transmissions we had to watch. And we know that the Hubble, in order to be in the shadow of the Earth, had to be at an angle, and so that meant it was looking downward, and this thing was coming up underneath of us. And I tell you the honest to God truth, I personally think this thing is real close to us right now. But, you know, that's just my general feeling that, you know, and I'm a pretty psychic guy. I have the feeling that this thing is right close by and that we're going to see it any time. Okay? Because, listen, they've known about this thing forever. And I mean, they've known about it forever. I mean, if I read about it in a science magazine in 1961, that tells you that, I mean, it's only 1,800 years away. How could they not be able to see it when it came around the backside of the last sun and headed this way?
Right, right.
You have to know they've been watching it, because if you know, Carl Sagan was showing stuff that they took with their old telescopes that was billions and billions of miles away, and this thing's only 1,800 years away. Well, and by 1930 it was only 70 years away. You know, we do estimate that this thing, let me give you a thing, maybe you can figure out your own timeline. We estimated that this thing is traveling around 3,500 miles an hour, okay?
Okay.
That was our estimate of its speed. Now, it has been picking up speed, and that's the reason why we think it's going to arrive early, because when it comes around the backside of the sun, it's got to double that speed in order to attain breakaway speed to leave the sun and not wind up orbiting it. It's never orbited the sun in the past that we know of, so that means that it's going to have to attain breakaway speed to head back out into space. Now, you look at the NASA videos, photos, and all this other crap those morons put on the internet. This thing is coming in. It's going to, as soon as it goes around the top of the sun, it's going to go back out into space.
Right.
And it's going to do this really fast. When it goes past us, it's going to go past us so fast that we'll almost have no time to get ready. That's my opinion, but, you know, just drawing it out on paper a few times and thinking about it, and I went, you know, if this thing picks up enough speed to make breakaway speed, then that means it's going to come past us. You know, this thing, according to what I was told, is that this thing is approximately 47,000 miles in diameter, you know, 4 or 5 times the size of the Earth, and it'll come past us, and we won't have a lot of warning, and we won't get to see it in the sky until it's on us. Now, I was told that the poles are not shifting at 42 miles a year. They're shifting at 42 miles a day, and the reason is because this planet is rolling over to face this thing. Now, when it goes by, it's not going to push our North Pole away. It's going to grab our southern pole with its northern pole, and it's going to be like somebody kicked this planet in the ass. That earthquake that it talks about in Revelations, when the opening of the sixth seal comes, from what I've been told, that's very accurate, because that's exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be a massive earthquake when it locks onto us. As it goes past us, we're going to follow it right upside down. The oceans are just going to be roaring from pole to pole, as you could well guess they would, because if you take a planet that's 7,000 miles across and roll it upside down in 30 minutes, you're going to have some real serious problems with wind and water. We should be preparing to expect this thing to show up any time, to finish in around 28 minutes. That doesn't give you a lot of warning. When you see that thing out there in the sky, you're going to have to run as fast as you can to your underground facility, because this is going to happen so fast. Now, see, here's another thing nobody's talking about. You've got this giant iron planet that they say is 47,000 miles across, getting ready to come up past us. And when it starts to approach us, it's going to start and have real serious effects.
So is it a planet or a failed star?
It's not a failed star. You know, I saw this thing up close. It did not look like a failed star. It looked just like our sun.
Right.
Okay? Would you call our sun a failed star?
No. Okay, well, you had said planet. I wasn't sure if it was like a failed star brown dwarf or a full sun. So it's a full sun?
It looks to me like a miniature sun, just like the one we have. The only difference is our sun is giving off flames and stuff, and this one's doing the same thing as it, but it's giving off this red iron oxide cloud of dust around it, and until it got close, we couldn't even tell what was in there. We could see it was hot, and it looked like it was just a dull red when we were first able to discern it through the red cloud. But as it approached, it started to become more apparent that this thing is just orange hot.
Right.
And it's got this enormous, and I mean enormous, at least 50 or 100,000 miles on each side of it, this red dust cloud that goes all the way around it. I know when we were watching it, as it started to make the upward swing to approach behind our sun, it was amazing. The red dust cloud settled down. Instead of being round, it started to settle down into a V like wings, upside down wings.
Right.
And I thought, boy, I wonder if that's where the ancient Sumerians got the idea this thing had wings, because, you know, centrifugal force is a funny thing. When it comes back up around the planet, when we see it in the sky, my guess is it's going to look like it's got wings, because centrifugal force is going to be pulling the red iron oxide dust and particles out to one side. This thing's going to look like a big red dragon, exactly like all the ancient Sumerians and the Chinese and all the rest of them that had documented this thing's passing before. It didn't look like a white ball or a snow cloud or nothing. It looked like a big red iron oxide dust cloud with a superheated star in the middle of it. And I mean, you know, and that's what we've seen. So, you know, I don't care what anybody else says. There's a possibility. There's more than one thing out there. You know, I watched it through the Hubble Space Telescope, and when this thing looked like it was across the street, the Hubble got cut off and they encrypted it, and that was the end of any transmissions we had to watch. And we know that the Hubble, in order to be in the shadow of the Earth, had to be at an angle, and so that meant it was looking downward, and this thing was coming up underneath of us. And I tell you the honest-to-God truth, I personally think this thing is real close to us right now. But, you know, that's just my general feeling that, you know, and I'm a pretty psychic guy. I have the feeling that this thing is right close by and that we're going to see it any time. Okay? Because, listen, they've known about this thing forever. And I mean, they've known about it forever. I mean, if I read about it in a science magazine in 1961, that tells you that, I mean, it's only 1,800 years away. How could they not be able to see it when it came around the backside of the last sun and headed this way?
Right.
You have to know they've been watching it, because if you know, Carl Sagan was showing stuff that they took with their old telescopes that was billions and billions of miles away. And this thing's only 1,800 years away. Well, and by 1930, it was only 70 years away. You know, we do estimate that this thing, let me give you a thing, maybe you can figure out your own timeline. We estimated that this thing is traveling around 3,500 miles an hour, okay?
Okay.
That was our estimate of its speed. Now, it has been picking up speed, and that's the reason why we think it's going to arrive early, because when it comes around the backside of the sun, it's got to double that speed in order to attain breakaway speed to leave the sun and not wind up orbiting it. It's never orbited the sun in the past that we know of, so that means that it's going to have to attain breakaway speed to head back out into space. Now, you look at the NASA videos, photos, and all this other crap those morons put on the internet. This thing is coming in. It's going to, as soon as it goes around the top of the sun, it's going to go back out into space.
Right.
And it's going to do this really fast. When it goes past us, it's going to go past us so fast that we'll almost have no time to get ready. That's my opinion, but, you know, just drawing it out on paper a few times and thinking about it, and I went, you know, if this thing picks up enough speed to make breakaway speed, then that means it's going to come past us. You know, this thing, according to what I was told, is that this thing is approximately 47,000 miles in diameter, you know, 4 or 5 times the size of the Earth, and it'll come past us, and we won't have a lot of warning, and we won't get to see it in the sky until it's on us. Now, I was told that the poles are not shifting at 42 miles a year. They're shifting at 42 miles a day. And the reason is because this planet is rolling over to face this thing. Now, when it goes by, it's not going to push our North Pole away. It's going to grab our Southern Pole with its Northern Pole, and it's going to be like somebody kicked this planet in the ass. That earthquake that it talks about in Revelations, when the opening of the sixth seal comes, from what I've been told, that's very accurate, because that's exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be a massive earthquake when it locks onto us. As it goes past us, we're going to follow it right upside down. The oceans are just going to be roaring from pole to pole, as you could well guess they would, because if you take a planet that's 7,000 miles across and roll it upside down in 30 minutes, you're going to have some real serious problems with wind and water. We should be preparing to expect this thing to show up any time, at least double, possibly more, which will put it here earlier than everybody is saying it will, and that this thing will probably be about 20 million miles from us when it crosses in front of us. and then as soon as it flips us upside down, we're going to go into its debris field. These CIA guys told me that this pole shift will probably happen from start to finish in around 28 minutes. That doesn't give you a lot of warning. When you see that thing out there in the sky, you're going to have to run as fast as you can to your underground facility, because this is going to happen so fast. Now, see, here's another thing nobody's talking about. You've got this giant iron planet that they say is 47,000 miles across, getting ready to come up past us. And when it starts to approach us, it's going to start and have real serious effects.
So is it a planet or a failed star?
It's not a failed star. You know, I saw this thing up close. It did not look like a failed star. It looked just like our sun.
Right.
Okay. Would you call our sun a failed star?
No. Okay, well, you had said planet. I wasn't sure if it was like a failed star brown dwarf or a full sun. So it's a full sun?
It looks to me like a miniature sun, just like the one we have. The only difference is our sun is giving off flames and stuff, and this one's doing the same thing as it, but it's giving off this red iron oxide cloud of dust around it, and until it got close, we couldn't even tell what was in there. We could see it was hot, and it looked like it was just a dull red when we were first able to discern it through the red cloud. But as it approached, it started to become more apparent that this thing is just orange hot.
Right.
And it's got this enormous, and I mean enormous, at least 50 or 100,000 miles on each side of it, this red dust cloud that goes all the way around it. I know when we were watching it, as it started to make the upward swing to approach behind our sun, it was amazing. The red dust cloud settled down. Instead of being round, it started to settle down into a V, like wings, upside down wings.
Right.
So this particular insider is stating in the most revealing terms that something ominous is heading our way that NASA has known about for decades. Neighboru, aka Planet X, and referred to by the Vatican as wormwood, has a mass that is 3 to 5 times the mass of Jupiter. Its composition is cesium, iron oxide, iron, oxygen, and ozone. And according to the interview by the Hubble Insider, it consists of 7 planets and moons that orbit it and innumerable asteroids. Its existence is known by all of the major governments of the world, and they are prepared, as I described earlier in this presentation. The object is very big, and until recently it is a red dwarf star visible only in the infrared spectrum. The agent claims that the government is monitoring the system and that in 2008 it could be seen in high detail with infrared telescopes. But the manner of observation is beginning to change. Using deductive logic, a number of independent videos are capturing its close approach now. We can speculate about its existence and whether the images and videos being published on a regular basis are genuine captures. But it doesn't change the narrative that something big is out there. Even the most reputable scientists are coming to the same conclusion that we have been warning about for many years now. That whatever is out there must be found and determined as to its impact upon the solar system and planet Earth. So it's no longer a question of whether it actually exists, but rather its actual location and how long before its absolute impact will be felt on our planet. In closing, I wanted to share with you a few troubling observations that were posted recently on Facebook. The first one is a capture from the Skycam Observatory in Deakin, Australia, showing the two-sun phenomenon. Now, the sun's companion has been visible in this side-by-side view on all Skycam for several days now, which indicates that the Nemesis system is rising to the ecliptic as I mentioned in the video which I published on October the 28th. So something is definitely taking place now, and it behooves us to start paying careful attention to the skies. So if any of our viewers and subscribers have anything of value, any type of information or images you care to share with us, please forward them over here for review as soon as you can. Also mentioned in this video presentation was the indication that this system would be accompanied by a long trail of debris consisting of fairly large-sized meteors and asteroids. The number of space objects that are penetrating the Earth's magnetic field has increased substantially in the past couple of years. So take a look at this incredible capture from Japan on October the 31st. And finally, if this doesn't blow you away, check out this eerie sky captured from Las Palmas, Spain on October the 26th. So as you can see, something definitely is going on that is very difficult to explain. It was in mid-August of this year, as some of you are aware, that myself and my family members and a number of friends were among the many tens of thousands who suffered the worst flooding in recorded history here in southeastern Louisiana. We are still recovering from that devastation. The funny thing about all of this is that it seems that we encounter one extreme weather event after another. Since the Great Flood of 2016, we have had what is now considered to be one of the most severe droughts that this area has encountered in recent times for this time of the year. Not only has our temperatures been steadily above normal, but the rainfall has registered less than 1/4 of an inch for the past 2 months. So I can tell you firsthand from my experiences that things are changing quickly here on Earth and in the heavens.
Northwest, I'd be considering moving. Seriously. The gist of it is this. The federal government estimates 13,000 Americans will die in a major earthquake and tsunami in the Pacific Northwest. It's not a question of whether, but when. This earthquake is coming, and it's overdue.
This morning, the most popular article on the New Yorker's website is rattling many Americans. The really big one examines a titanic earthquake and tsunami, but not where you might imagine.
A fault line called the Cascadia Subduction Zone runs for 700 miles off the Pacific Northwest coast. Experts think it will trigger the worst national disaster in News Science and Futures contributor Michio Kakuka is a physics professor at the City University of New York. Good morning.
Morning.
So it's overdue. When will it might come?
Well, this is the mother of all earthquake faults. It can pack a wallop 30 times that of the San Andreas fault. So forget all the Hollywood hype about the San Andreas fault. We're talking about an earthquake, a 9.0, similar to what devastated northern Japan, which killed over 15,000 people.
Cascadia subduction zone stretches about 700 miles from Cape Mendocino, California, to Vancouver, Canada. Big cities expected to be affected include Seattle and Portland. Some scientists believe the earthquake, when it goes off, will reach between 8.7 and 9.2 on the Richter scale and cause a tsunami.
As president of the Portland Post of the Society of American Military Engineers, I felt a real need, a real desire to mobilize engineers to help better prepare our region for a Cascadia earthquake.
Army and Air Guard elements successfully operate in a joint mission environment. The only way to move supplies and support to stranded residents in need after such an event would be by air.
The last big one was 315 years ago. We think the cycle time is roughly 240 years. Do the math. We are overdue in this calculation with another big one.
It's really great to see the state move in a direction of supporting domestic operations at this level. It allows us to really be much more dynamic and respond to the state and to our community.
We've known about the Cascadia subduction zone for quite a while. It's a serious risk. A big earthquake in the Pacific Northwest could be the worst disaster the country has faced.
Warning. Major Earth changes before December 31, 2017 predicted by Indian scientists. Big earthquake and tsunami alert in Indian Ocean region before December 31, 2017. The earthquake and tsunami alert in Indian Ocean region. According to that message, a vigorous earthquake is about to happen on the Indian Ocean which could affect the entire coast of the Asian continents. More than 11 countries are on the vulnerable list, namely India, China, Japan, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Thailand, Indonesia, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka and Gulf countries. And these areas will also encounter Seisma storm during that period which could turn the situation worse. The Seisma storm may strike us with 120 km to 180 km velocity along with heavy rain. This earth changes is predicted by Babu Khalil, director of BK Research Association for ESP. Extrasensory perception and Earth and space prediction. According to Babu Khalil, in Indian Ocean there will be a major earthquake expecting before December 31, 2017. This vigorous earthquake can shake the entire coast of the Asian continental areas. Moreover, the effect will even replace the boundary of seashore.
من أهل مكة أن مكة يأتيها عاصفة رملية شديدة جدا جدا ويكون الناس في فزع وهلع وخوف وارتباك شديد ثم فجأة يسقط أحد جدران الكعبة وتكون هناك فوضى عارمة. طبعا باختصار الرؤية ما طويلة لكن هي لها دلالة والله أعلم. طبعا هي الرؤية ليست طيبة وهي منذرة وليست مبشرة وفيها دلالة ليست طيبة على أحداث في البلد. باختصار شديد يعني أقول باختصار شديد أنها ليست طيبة ولها آثار غير طيبة على مواقع في البلد أو غيره. الله أعلم يعني لا نستطيع أن نفصل أكثر من هذا.
طبعا أقول الرؤى دائما المخيفة التي فيها رعب وخوف فلا نذكرها وإلا هي كثيرة جدا 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 لا نستطيع أن نقولها للناس. طبعا
رؤيا انتشار الجرذان في الرياض بحجم البشر.
حلمت أن الرياض صرنا نعاني من الجرذان الكبيرة حجمها قد البشر وسجلت حالات اعتداء على البشر. المشكلة أن بالحلم الرياض فيها نهر وكأنها أوروبا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. هذا يقول حلمت اليوم بأن كوكب كبير جدا يبتلع الأرض وينفجر. الرأي من ليبيا إن صدقت الرؤيا الله تعالى أعلم. الكوكب من صنع الله عز وجل ومن إتقانه، وهو زينة للأرض، ويدل على يعني زينة الأرض كما قال الله عز وجل في الآية: إنا زينا السماء الدنيا بزينة الكواكب، ويدل على عظيم صنعه. فلما جن عليه الليل قال هذا، فلما جن عليه الليل رأى كوكبا في الآية. فإن صدقت الرؤيا والله تعالى أعلم، الكوكب الكبير الذي جاء وابتلع الأرض يظهر لي تغير في الأجواء والطقس، بل حتى في المد والجزر كذلك الزلازل أو غير ذلك سيحصل تغيير كبير. والكواكب معروف أن كل كوكب يختلف عن الآخر، فابتلاع هذا الكوكب الأرض يدل على أن الأرض ستتغير، والعلم عند الله من ناحية الطقس. وهذه الرؤية تؤيد رؤية سابقة عبرناها الكوكب الأحمر، وهي قبل سنتين، ورأينا نحن كيف السنة الماضية تغيرت الأجواء وزادت الأمطار وجاءت في غير موسمها ازدادت، فالرؤية تدل على ذلك. الأمر الثاني، إن صدقت الرؤيا الكواكب تعبر بالدول، تعبر بأنها شبيهة يعني بالدول يعني المستقلة. فكوكب هجم على آخر أو ابتلع الأرض، فيظهر لي أن هناك حرب كبيرة تقوم، والعلم عند الله، ومحاولة سيطرة، وقد تكون حرب كبيرة جدا، لأنه حصل الانفجار، لأنه قال: حلمت بأن كوكب كبير جدا يبتلع الأرض وينفجر. فالانفجار دائما في المنامات ليس محمود. انفجار الأرض وانفجار الكوكب يدل على اختلاط الدماء والحروب، والرؤى كما ذكرنا سابقا تواطأت حول ذلك، كما في الرؤيا السابقة حول أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، الرؤيا اللي قبل قليل عرضناها، وهي أحداث رهيبة في 2022 أو غيرها من الرؤى، والعلم عند الله والله تعالى أعلم.
هذه الرؤية تؤكد بأن الطقس والأجواء ومغناطيسيات الأرض سوف تتغير في الجزيرة العربية وفي العالم بأسره.
لله عز وجل سنن. الشيء إذا بلغ 100 غالبا يبدأ في الانحدار، كما أن الشدائد إذا بلغت 7 غالبا تبدأ في الزوال. فإذا جمعت هذا وهذا، أولا إذا جمعت هذا وهذا نتم، نظرت فيما عرف في زماننا بالربيع العربي، وقد نجم عن هذا الذي سمي بالربيع العربي آلام، نجم عنه آلام وجراح وفرقة وبلاء في الأمة، إنكارها نوع من المكابرة، وهذه بدأت في أواخر 2010 للميلاد، أي أنها بنهاية عام 2017 تنتهي 7 أعوام. فلعل الله يجعل للأمة بعد هذه السبع كما قال جل وعلا في حق نبيه يوسف: ثم يأتي من بعد ذلك عام فيه يغاث الناس وفيه يعصرون، فيتزامن مع نهاية عام 2017 انتهاء 100 عام على وعد بلفور، وانتهاء 7 سنين على ما سمي بثورة الربيع العربي.
نأخذ مقطع الدكتور أحمد الجوهري جزاه الله خيرا.
القطعة الثانية: نقش يظهر الشمعدان السباعي، وهو أقدس رمز ديني عند اليهود، وتظهر على النقش كتابات بالخط العبري المربع. وقد استطاع أساتذة اللغات القديمة بعد جهد كبير قراءة الكلمات التي كتبت على النقش بطريقة رمزية لتعطي دلالة محددة. وخلاصة ما توصل له أساتذة اللغة من قراءة للحروف في النقش هو: كلمة ضعيف كررت 7 مرات. وإنني أرجح أن صانع النقش يريد القول: إذا بلغت إسرائيل العقد 7 في الملك حل بها الضعف والوهن. وهذا التعبير يوافق ما ورد عن النبي دانيال عليه السلام في العهد القديم من أن إسرائيل تنتهي بعد 70 سنة من قيامها، وبحساب السنة القمرية تكون إسرائيل في سنة 2016 للميلاد أتمت 70 سنة في فلسطين. لقد جاء ذكر أورشليم في سفر زكريا الإصحاح 14 يقول: لحمهم يذوب وهم واقفون على أقدامه، وعيونهم تذوب في أوقابها، ولسانهم يذوب في فمهم.
وأخيرا وليس آخرا نقول: من وجد الله وجد كل شيء، من وجد الله وجد كل شيء، ومن فقد الله فقد كل شيء. من وجد الله ماذا فقد، ومن فقد الله ماذا وجد. اللهم إنا نسألك حبك وحب من يحبك والعمل الذي يقربنا إلى حبك. اللهم إنا نسألك أن تجعلنا من رفقاء نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم في الفردوس الأعلى بلا حساب ولا سابقة عذاب، بلا حساب ولا سابقة عذاب، آمين. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصل اللهم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.